Welcome to Forbo Flooring webinar about modeling data. In light of the overwhelming challenges facing the world today regarding, of course, climate change, it is valuable as a human being to receive hopeful guidance in making sustainable choices, right? Well, especially when all eyes are on you as an interior designer, an architect, an engineer, or a building professional to lead us all out of this holy crisis. I exaggerate a little bit, but still, we can imagine that you are here as one of those professionals who came to the webinar to actually, contribute and to find a way to contribute to a climate neutral, even a climate positive future by getting a grip on the cradle to gate of your delivered products. And when I say we, I mean Forbo Flooring, of course, as the organizer of this webinar. I also mean Marie and Matthew, whom I will introduce in about 1 minute, our speakers abroad, and myself here in Amsterdam as an independent presenter and program maker in the creative industries. For those who were expecting Willem Bumagne, I'm sorry. Instead, it is me, because Willem is slowly beginning to enjoy a well-deserved life after working as a director of strategic communications at Forbo. Willem, if you are watching, I would like to thank you for your commitment to these webinars, and I hope I can at least do my best to continue your inspiring work. Which brings me back to you, at home, at work, as a participant, hopefully, not only an audience. We hope to spend the next hour creating the knowledge that we need to move forward in, shaping our built environment. So we therefore hope for an active chat. And I will be getting all of your questions and all of your remarks here in my tablet. And Lieselotte from Forbo is also able to answer your questions about Forbo directly. As I'm an independent moderator, I cannot do that for Forbo. But please feel free to share all those things at any given moment. And also give us a little bit smooth details, because we'd like to know in which of a good company we are. There will now first follow 2 sparkling presentations of about 50 minutes each with a small intermezzo because there's always urgent questions that need to be answered. And we'll conclude in the end at about 4:45 our session with a joint Q&A. Now, it is time, finally, for me to introduce you to Matthew Jackson with a background in architecture, tech startups, strategic development and marketing, and he first worked at BIMobject in Sweden for almost a decade. But now, Matthew is devotedly building a network of professionals who share one common goal: making construction a zero-carbon industry. He's a lecturer in building information modeling, and here in his role as a co-founder of Zero. Welcome, Matthew. Are you there?
I am here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you're in Sweden, right? Am I correct?
I am. It's a beautiful, warm, sunny Swedish day here today. So very much enjoying my day.
No, it's quite hot in here as well. We're in the studio. You're in your office, I believe.
I'm in my office at home, yes.
Okay. So first, you will answer the questions such as what requirements does the industry want and need to be able to meet the coming years, right? And what role can BIM data play in that future perspective? Please, the screen is yours.
So thank you very much to Forbo for inviting me to speak today. I really very passionate about this subject, and I can talk for hours about this, but I will give it to you in 15 minutes. The broad picture that we have and the challenge that we face as an industry is that construction as a whole, new building, contributes to about 15% of our overall greenhouse gases, our emissions into the atmosphere. And if you are a designer today, you have the amazing opportunity to help be part of resolving that challenge, because we are all making decisions on what products go into our buildings. The work that I'm doing and the work that I want to talk about is how are we going to decarbonize construction over the next 10, 20, 30 years, hopefully becoming a zero carbon industry by 2030. It is our belief, and the belief shared quite commonly, and I will explain this throughout the presentation today, that not only will we be expecting to see the receipts of the cost of a construction project, we will also be expecting to see the receipts of the CO2, the carbon that has been used and is embodied within the projects in which we are doing. Carbon literacy, accountability, and transparency is coming down the line. And without data, this is basically an impossible task to solve. The work that I do very quickly is we are a global network of 2,800 people. All of you right now can join my network for free. And what we're doing is we are creating education, which is free at point of access for everybody to what can I do in my project to reduce carbon? And it can go into a lot of detail around that. So let's talk about why change is needed. I'm going to talk about not just about sustainability from a global warming perspective, but also just the sustainability of construction itself, because we have many, many challenges which we are trying to solve all at the same time, which brings us some fun challenges ahead. As discussed, 4 to 5 billion tons of CO2 per year is coming out of the construction industry. So not only are we polluting, we are also spending already a lot of money. According to this, these figures are taken from a McKinsey report on global infrastructure and capital major projects, where we are seeing not only are we spending a lot of money than we expected to spend, we are also delivering a lot of projects late. On average, capital projects are being delivered 20 months late, but many projects that we deliver are quite late. And we not only using a lot of carbon, we are also using a lot of landfill as an industry. 40% of all global solid waste comes from construction and the built environment. And 1/3 of that waste from construction is mistakes, things that we just do wrong. Things, for example, like this, which is, a stupid example, but there are many, many examples of things that we just do badly. And there's many reasons for this, but one of it is just lack of coordination and lack of data to enable us to make the right decisions on the building site. And the other thing that's happening at the same time and is kind of changing our industry is something that a lot of us call the Greta effect. Now, you may or may not like Greta. It's not really important. The interesting thing that's happened is that her school friends and her strikes have brought the conversation of sustainability to the family dinner table, where we are discussing it now in everyday life. And in Europe, if you are based in Europe today, the European Union have decided that they want to be the first climate neutral continent. And with that, and with the work that is happening around in our social space, there is a huge emphasis on creating a very eco-friendly, sustainably driven economy based throughout the European Union. And already in construction, we have two very, I would call, aggressive and robust laws coming out of Denmark and Sweden, which are asking some big questions. And those questions are, you cannot build a building, you cannot get a permit to build a building without understanding that receipt, which I showed you at the beginning of this presentation. They want to know the embodied carbon inside a building they're going to build. In Denmark, there are limits already on a square meter. In Sweden, there are not limits at this time. They just want to know the information. And this is happening everywhere, especially throughout the European Union. Here are a list of some of those examples of these new rules that are coming in place. Some are being enforced, some are not being enforced. There are, of course, huge challenges for an industry to start answering some of these questions. And to answer these questions, we have to kind of catch up a little bit with many other industries in around the digital transformation space. Now, what do I mean by digital transformation? Well, a lot of the things that we do in our everyday life have changed. I'm sure many of you will be going on your summer holidays very shortly, and I'm pretty sure that most of you didn't phone every single hotel to try and work out where the best it was to stay. You probably used a digital platform such as booking.com or hotels.com. I'm sure you're not taking your CD collection with you in your suitcase. You have Spotify or Apple Music. and I'm sure you'll also be watching some Netflix or any other platform. These are digital platforms. These digital platforms have changed the way in which society lives and works. And we call this the digital transformation. We've gone from taking something analog, physical, and made it digital. Digitalization is how do we access that technology? And the third one, and the most important one for me, is the people aspect. And that is the jobs, the roles, our daily life has been directly affected by this change. There are new job roles that exist. Marsha, who is presenting today, is a webinar host and presenter. That was not a thing 20 years ago. It wasn't even a job. And this change is happening right now in construction. There are new roles, new things that are appearing, and people are skilling up. They are going back to school. They are learning all the time on how do I take advantage of this digital transformation in my daily life. And as you know, I'm sure many of you know, that is because, of course, we're going through the building information modeling kind of journey as an industry. And I emphasize information because at the end of the day, it's the information which is the key aspect here. There are, of course, 3D modeling options and geometric representations, of course, but it's the information that really does truly hold the power. And the great thing is that this industry is accelerating through adopting new technologies and digital transformation. In 2021, we're at 44% adoption. This is a survey carried out in the 8 largest economies in Europe from an independent a researcher just outside of Rotterdam. So it shows that the industry is moving this way really, really quickly. But how can we really kind of use the power of data and make better decisions with this data, and therefore, by default, save the planet? I'm going to give you an example from other industry for a second. I'm going to look at the car industry. I don't own a car myself. I'm a cyclist. I live in the city. But if you look at common platforms for creating a product, a car is a product, many car platforms now and organizations run the same foundation, the same chassis, and basically then build the car on top. And what is being suggested, what is being kind of pushed forward right now, is for something to happen similarly within construction. Buildings become a product, buildings are built in factories, buildings have a common foundation. We're already doing this for kitchens. If you've ever bought a kitchen from IKEA have been doing this for years, building parts of your home off of a common factory, a common foundation on which you just select some of the finishes and appear. And this is happening, although this is a render of an image, factory-made buildings, or at least partially made buildings. And here in Sweden, I can look out my window, I can see 3 buildings, which the facade is coming on the back of a lorry already pre-made, is definitely the future that we need to create a zero carbon industry. And that does scare a lot of people, because a lot of people are a bit worried about, well, aren't we going to end up with all the buildings kind of looking the same? And my answer to that is, well, no, not at all. If you think about it from pieces of Lego, for example. So I'm an architect, so I love Lego. If you had 6 pieces of Lego, 2 times 4, how many different ways do you think you could arrange by design those pieces of Lego? Is it 10? Is it 1,000? Is it 10,000? No, it's just under 1 billion different ways. And what the industry is suggesting here, what we are kind of questioning out there, is that if we know all of the products that are made for the construction industry, and we have the digital Lego in some way, then we are able to create a great deal of designs with the information that we have. And this is because we really need to ask the manufacturers. And Forbo here is a fantastic example here with the work that they have done over the recent years, is bringing the supply chain, the manufacturers who make the stuff, into our design cycles over on the left-hand side of the screen much, much earlier. Because if you're using information around products, then, and using just bananas as a silly example, we will understand inside our models what the bananas will actually do. And this is important because we know, and this is an extremely old diagram, this is from like 2004, I think, this diagram now, is that the cost of making changes gets more expensive over time. We have so much ability to impact early in the design, and instead of using a lot of the data dump, the product decisions here in the middle, we should be making product-based decisions much, much earlier so we can work out a much more green, sustainable, efficient design. And to give you an example, to say you were here today to look at Forbo Flooring Systems and you wanted to pick a floor, you will have a specification for a floor. And previously, in previous years, we haven't been able to really do this very well, but you should be able to go onto databases and start asking questions. Should I purchase floor A here, which is a generic vinyl sheet flooring, costs 10,000 euros as flooring? Or should I go to flooring B, which is from Forbo? It costs twice as much, but it's a better product. It's a better made thing. And now what would usually happen is that if we were going for a very traditional non-BIM enabled, not data enabled process, we would always choose option A, which is the generic. But we now have information and processes which can tell us, no, option B is better. It will cost you more at the beginning, but it will cost you less over time. It is a more efficient, better, economically and sustainable product for your building. And these are the concepts which are being deployed today, because we can start looking at the energy efficient and environmental rating of everything, of every product that you can possibly think of. We can now look at that and see that. And that information is going to be delivered to you, the life cycle analysis, via EPDs, environmental product declarations. That's an entire other webinar worth an hour of talking, just this one slide. And I think what you will find is that we in our daily jobs, with the power of AI that is appearing and the power of very smart processes, is that all we should be doing as an industry is asking the right questions to the right machines to give us answers. The AI empowered and algorithm empowered processes are here, and without data, without BIM data, none of this is possible. We cannot build buildings in a factory without BIM data either. It just has to be done and has to be there. So that, in conclusion, in a very fly-through kind of TED Talk style, is that the digital revolution is 100% here, and I'm sure most of you are on that path. The other thing that's here is new construction methods. We will change the way that we build. Whether some of us like it or not, it is the most sustainable and ecological way to move forward. But we cannot do that without data and information and the skills that will be needed within the industry, within the design industry, to manage that data. And all of that will drive a low carbon future. I look forward to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, for your inspiring presentation. I didn't see any questions popping up. Luckily, I have tons of them ready because I was listening to your story and it's very clear to me. So to you, there is no option without this, digital information, right? But I was wondering, all these digital transformations, they take an amount of time, right? They take sometimes a couple of years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. How far along are we now when it comes to building information and modeling data?
I still don't think we're even halfway through. I mean, I think that, I've been doing this sort of presentation now for about 15 years-ish, give or take.
15.
If you compare other industries, for example, right? If you take music, it took music 40 years to digitize from the first time they put ones and zeros onto a CD to where we are now with Spotify. It took a long time, but they did that for commercial reasons. I think here we have agency and urgency, where you've got legislation coming down the line. We didn't speak about taxonomy in this presentation at all, but taxonomy is going to happen in Europe by 2030 on this stuff. around carbon counting. So I think we have a different agency. So I think it's those big projects, those valuable contracts that we as designers hold, but those questions are going to be asked pretty soon by most people.
Yes. And what are the questions you regularly get when in 15 years you've been, presenting all this information to people? What are the common questions you get?
I think people just find it quite hard to just learn this stuff, and there is a lot. And I by all means, I'm not an expert, of carbon counting or anything like that at all. I think it's getting on a journey, but also carrying your business behind you. But it's time and money. Time and money does have to be spent, in the same way that construction went through its big health and safety adjustment back in the 80s, early 90s. This is much bigger than that. And a lot of time and money had to be spent back then on huge changes to the industry. So it's a similar thing, but at a 10x kind of level.
Yeah. And I imagine you also speak to, a large amount of people coming from students, for example, who you give lectures to. How do they respond to the use of these data?
Hurry up and make more.
They're more used to it, probably, no?
Yeah, I mean, we have, and again, this is a whole other webinar conversation. But when I have a lot of, we have a young person problem coming into construction right now, because compared to other industries, it's just not as attractive from a digital standpoint, which is unfortunate, because construction and designing construction is amazing. It's the most amazing industry to work in, I think. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, you haven't solved that yet? You haven't done that? Because they do it over there in that industry. So I think it's just more of a surprise. But that, it brings challenges, and for a lot of young people, challenge is good, and it draws them in. So that's how I view it, at least. Yeah,
and I imagine we're also co-creating this transformation, right? Because we're all creating this new system together. So I'm interested in seeing how it develops. Thank you so much so far. We'll see you in about 15 minutes together with Marie. Because we have another speaker ready to present, which I think is an expert. So our next and last speaker is Marie Rouel. Welcome, Marie. Are you here?
Yes.
There you are. Happy to see you. Marie, you are a software as a service expert, am I correct? And you understand the language of the world's leading architectural firms, right? Okay, that's nice, because you are a key account manager at BIMobject in Munich. And I think BIMobject is really the go-to marketplace for BIM content. So your platform is cultivating collaboration between architects, engineers, manufacturers in creating a sustainable future. So for the viewers at home, if you are one of those architects, interior designers, or maybe a manufacturer, please do share your questions for Marie so she can answer directly your questions. Let's find out how BIMobject contributes to the changing needs of our viewers, right? And Marie, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Marsha. So thanks a lot for inviting me here today. I'm really glad to be with you from the German office, as you said. Today I'd like actually to illustrate what has been presented by Matthew previously by sharing some insights based on our marketplace and what behavior and trends have been identified over time when it comes to sustainability. But first, for those who don't know what we do, what is BIMobject, I'll start with that. Feel free to visit our website also during the webinar. It can also maybe, raise some questions during the presentation. But basically, we are the leading marketplace for building product information. The company comes from Sweden and has been created in 2011. And now we are currently around 170 employees split worldwide in different locations. And we provide design inspiration and digital product information to all architects, designers, and engineers globally. And we also help manufacturers such as Forbo Flooring to have a better way to reach, influence, and understand this audience. So in other words, we are bridging the gap between manufacturers and specifiers. So what does it mean in terms of metrics? So BIMobject.com has currently 3 million registered users. That generates 1 download every second in average. So for instance, last year we had 50 million of files from different formats downloaded. And you can find over 2,000 different product brands published, and all the products are splitted in 22 different categories of products. So as you can understand, with all the data we gather over time since 2011, all this content available and shared by manufacturer on our marketplace, our mission is, of course, to support the digitalization of construction and create a sustainable future. And that's why in January 2022, we've gone a step further, and BIMobject invested in Carbon Zero product. Why? Because Carbon Zero is active in the market for software and services for sustainable construction through the sustainability platform called Product. And we share a common goal, and that's why we decided to partner together. We want to build the world-leading platform for sustainable building design. Because on one side, products provide specific sustainability information on a product level, like we do also. We provide information, content on a product level as well. So thanks to this platform and this collaboration, something or sustainability information that are kind of abstract sometimes and complex to understand, it's much easier to understand and to process. So material suppliers at the end can clearly demonstrate both the technical performance and the sustainability profile of their products. So it's easier to compare sustainability metrics of construction products in an easy way, I would say. So at the end, BIMobject and Products strategic partnerships combines so BIMobject global marketplace with BIMobjects and the product's cutting-edge software platform. So of course, we are just starting our great journey, and we are constantly learning from each other. We share our expertise, and our offering as a partner will continue to evolve over time. But of course, also at BIMobject, by analyzing the data generated on our marketplace, we have made a number of observations over the years, which has led us to continually adapt our offer. So what did we identify? We ran several surveys over time, so mainly between 2020 and 2022. We asked around 4,800 different professionals coming from architecture, engineering, construction, and we clearly identify a strong signal of a green movement that proceeds up business in construction. So first, there's a clear increase of digitalization because professionals expect to adopt more and more digital tools. And there's also an increase in sustainability as a critical aspect of the design process and the building product selection. So as a matter of fact, 80% of the professionals we asked feel it's really important to design something sustainable. And when we asked the same question in 2020, it was 49%. So there's a 25% increase in 2 years, which is, I would say, a lot. These respondents from our 2022 surveys, so 45% of them said that these come from client demands. It's the main driver for sustainable design. Of course, it's not really surprising because the role of the clients can play a really important aspect in project buildings. And for the remaining 55%, as you can see here, of course, it's the aspiration of the professional, of the designers that drive sustainable design. The willingness also to have healthier buildings built, environmental regulations, as Matthew said, it plays a role. It's coming. In different countries, it's already partly mandatory. So there's a really strong triggers we can identify on the market in that direction. So what is the current offering of BIMobject to answer these trends we identified? So as a fact, the number of EPDs created has been multiplied by 30 in the last 10 years. So that's why we mainly focus on providing environmental properties and based on EPD data. And of course, because We depend on the information shared and published by the manufacturers on our platform. They are the one to drive also the publication of their content, to communicate about their brand, and it's what is mostly shared today. So we split the different phases of the product life cycle in different fields. Also, the complete EPD as a document, we'll see it later on. And of course, there are other formats available on our platform, depending on where the manufacturers define their key markets. So we have also local formats available. But now I'd like to show you the concrete example of Forbo Flooring and how they address sustainability data on BIMobject to you designers. So let's start a search on BIMobject with the keywords flooring, of course. So you directly get a first result page. You can narrow your search with subcategories if you're already in the flooring one. On the left side, we have a menu with additional filters. We have a sustainability one when you can filter only your result and your products based on EPD content and CO2 emissions information. So you have already like a specific result page with different products listed. If you want to get more information regarding Forbo Flooring, you have a total description of the brand, what they do, where they are. They show the collections to help you have a better idea what is the different ranges of products available, what are the products concerned. So you have a bunch of information to help you in your choice when you plan your project. And if we deep dive in a product like this one, you have, of course, images to showcase how the product can look like in reality. And you have description, additional information to help you in your choice. Of course, technical information is part of it, specifications. You have also different technical ones available, links that you can visit Forbo Flooring website in case you need other information, and the EPD properties, so environmental data, splitted, like I said before, depending on the different types of details. If you want, you can, of course, download the EPD declaration as a PDF file, like you can see here, like the other different files available related to this product to help you integrating the object in your project. So as you can see, there's a bunch of information available to you to get as many information as possible for the project you have to select the different objects. So now, what is our vision? So that's currently our offering, what kind of information available on our platform. But of course, we want to do much more. So as explained by Matthew, it's important to gather information from the beginning of a project to reach the goal of sustainability. So it's necessary to select, present better materials in part of a project to get innovative, gather accurate and performance data. So as we saw previously, of course, it's driven by legislation, by user demand, and we always keep an eye at BIMobject on the needs and trends, the evolution of the industry and the market, because our goal is really to meet all the users' requirements that are looking to find products based on these requirements via the product information we collect and we publish. So what we want to achieve then, it's first of all, by the end of this year, we really want to offer the possibility to users to filter directly and narrow the results based on the information you can find in an EPD declaration. So that's why there's a bunch of filters we are working on to help you to do so. But that's not it. We also want to build a stronger partnership with product to make sure that there's more integrated offering to professional, to you designers, and to enable a seamless user experience. So the climate declaration, in a way, can be tailored directly when starting looking for products on BIMobject. So to conclude, actually, content, product information you find, for instance, on BIMobject or digitally, how objects, how systems can be compared with each other, is already helping you as designers to make sustainable choices as objective as possible, because you have access to this data and you can interact much easier with the manufacturers and they can share relevant information to you. So of course, regional initiatives, whether they come from legislators or the building sector itself, accelerate innovation and project environmental impact.
Thank you so much for all these insights on what BIMobject can actually, help us in making better choices, and also what your vision is and how it should develop. We have a question in the chat, actually two, and one was: is sustainability already a key search criteria today?
Of course, in the keywords like used by our audience, it can be directly in Google or directly on our marketplace. There's more and more these words, depending on the products, of course, but we identify more and more this wording, of course.
Yeah. And was this something that was there from the beginning, as it sounds so logical, actually? Or is it something that you had to introduce?
Actually, it came directly from our audience. And of course, the manufacturers, because maybe 5-10 years ago, we also had less products that are touring towards sustainability on our marketplace. And now there are more and more green products.
Yeah. And regarding the development of BIMobject now, these last 2 decades or something, how do you actually develop your project? How do you work together, for example, with the clients, or how do you develop the looks of it, the criteria? Is it a creative collaboration of you all? How does it work, actually?
Of course, it's a collaboration with the manufacturers, and it's also a collaboration with the users, with our audience. We have 2 teams dedicated for each type of contact persons, and we take, like I said, we have a lot of survey, but we also do it with manufacturers to make sure that we answer the market needs. And of course, we build a strategy, for instance, with manufacturers according to the results we get, and follow the performance.
Okay.
Closely.
Okay, thank you. And there was another question. How do you deal with comparing technical data between products that make the best choice? Shall I repeat it for you? How do you deal with comparing technical data between products to make the best choice?
So actually, a professional looking for products on our platform has a bunch of different filters to help comparing the products. Of course, on the result page, you have already a lot of information, and having images and being able to click or maybe to select also some products without downloading them from the beginning, but putting them in your own BIMobject account will help you to compare them with each other.
Yeah. And I can imagine that it's quite a time-consuming development, right? To gathering all that information from different partners, and it's also, I think, very costly. How did you actually start this gathering all this information? I think in the beginning you really had to need to convince people, to join the marketplace. What is the motivation for people to join your marketplace?
From a professional perspective, actually, we noticed that designers, architects are always eager to share their feedback with us. So that's something also I experience regularly when we have a trade show and we meet also people in person. So there's always a good feedback to help you deep dive further. And of course, we have, like I said, such surveys to gather on a bigger volume feedbacks.
Okay, I have one last question for people that I know in my network, at least designers who maybe work more individually, are not so much into data, might find, also, even though your presentations are very rich and very enthusing, it could also be overwhelming. Where do you start if you're not into data-driven? Where do you start? Do you just email you and say, help me? Or how does it go? Where do I start?
So as a designer, of course, you create your account on BIMobject and you can have a first look what type of products, of categories you can find. If you recognize some manufacturers, you can, of course, visit the product pages. So it gives you a first idea of what's available, what are the products, the brands, the technical aspects. You don't need to be an expert of BIM from the beginning. And as a manufacturer, of course, if you're not really, you don't have a clear strategy of BIM and the digitalization, we are here in our team to help you with your strategy and also to publish the first products.
Yeah, let's assume that we convince a couple of those designers and architects who are not yet in your network, and they actually made this account and they start searching around for these criteria. And what are the common questions you get from these newbies?
You mean from a user perspective?
Yes, or? From a user perspective, yes.
Actually, that's we have lots of questions and we have some feedbacks because we also allow the users to share their point of view when they download a file, for instance. So we have a new feature available, and it also helps the manufacturer to have feedback and understand if the information they share is correct, and is also helping these professionals, of course. But lots of question we get is can be with the level of details, because depending on the different phases of a project, you need more or less certain information. So that's really helpful for the manufacturers to understand that.
Yeah, yeah. Now we're talking about the manufacturers. How do you convince them to, really join this market and really share honestly all of the information that they can get their hands on?
Actually, we are not the only one seeing that there's a clear trend also to provide more and more information and BIM files. So for some of them, they are starting slowly working with BIM and understanding what it means as a process, what kind of information is available, and we're here to help. And for others, they clearly get some requests from customers or from specifiers, and they need BIM files. So that's the first starting point.
Ah, okay. Hey, and for the ones who are watching, are much more into LCA, for example, what are their current needs? What is changing in this industry that you are bringing to their table? How are you serving the people that are really into life cycle assessments, really already very experted in working with BIM data? What are you serving them? In what way?
So as I showed previously, we have a certain level of information. It's of course depending on what the manufacturer has available. But with the partnership we have a product, we really want to go a step forward and really want to go much more in detail, that it's even easier to access this data, to personalize it, and to tailor it to the project.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, one last question for you directly. What have you learned so far in this? It's a massive creative collaboration, right? Everybody giving you all the data, people demanding the data, and then, people responding to it as users, but also as suppliers. What have you learned from this massive creative collaboration so far?
We learn so much, actually. I learn each day. So we have so much data we can analyze to see what are the main file formats that are requested by users depending on the region or the country. So it's super useful for manufacturer. We can also identify, you talked about the keywords previously. So analyzing the keywords can also help us identifying the trends and to see where there's potential also for manufacturers. So data can be interpreted and analyzed. We have really a lot.
Yes. Well, it's time to bring back Matthew, because I think, to me, when I just interpreted your presentations, I'm not an expert in data-driven material, absolutely not. But I do know a lot of designers working towards this more sustainable future, but they find it hard, of course, to really make the right choices. So I think BIM data could be an excellent choice of making more sustainable choices. So I agree. But then again, there must be, practical considerations that you need to be done. And I was wondering, if you are a more individual designer, a more experimental architect, for example, I was talking to before, and they said, well, data is not so much my thing. I'm more about experimenting, you know, with analog, with materials. What would be your answer to an architect like this?
I mean, at some point, data has to be produced. And at some point, data has to be handed over to the next person that's going to carry on the design, whether you are only involved in the early stages or the later stages. The biggest kind of, I guess, challenges that we have is that data stays in silos. We're not very good at passing data along.
Yep.
Could be contractual reasons, whatever it is, right? And it's about, because even in an early stage, you should have at least some idea of, is your building going to be made out of steel, concrete, or wood, or a mix of? And you have early calculations of, you know, calculating the potential impact on the environment by building the building. I mean, if I'm going to be really blunt about it, the first thing you should question is, do you need to build the building?
Yes.
Is the first question. Could you reuse something? Like those considerations as an individual architect working early are the sorts of questions you should be asking the client. They are extraordinarily important things to ask and will have huge impact on the whole project.
Yeah. So Matthew, to come back to your presentation earlier, you said that the sustainability of construction itself also comes with many challenges. You didn't really mention a specific one. Could you maybe give us one that's really striking for you, really important to focus on?
Well, I think one of the striking ones is from a labour force. We are aging extraordinarily fast.
Yes.
We are losing. I don't have statistics for across Europe, but in the UK they keep pretty good statistics around this, and they have lost 12% of the total workforce in construction in the last 4 years since COVID, which is extraordinary. Now, of course, Brexit's happened, but this is a common thing across major economies. Germany as well also has a very aging statistic. The other thing is money.
Yes.
The industry runs on very tight margins, and if we want to innovate, if we want to educate, if we want to raise awareness, if we want to try new things, we want to take risks, then the money question has to be approached. That's a whole long conversation, debate right there. But those are the other things which are pressing the industry right now.
How do you address that topic when somebody brings that up, that money topic?
Well,
just to have an answer, you know, for me.
Well, the answer is, okay, so I was at a civil engineering panel discussion 2 weeks ago. Completely, obviously, different market to this. And the question was blunt. It was, okay, climate crisis, how are we going to pay for this? My answer is relatively simple. We will. You know, at the end of the day, companies or organizations that are changing their products have to ensure that they maintain some level of profitability. Therefore, they will pass those costs on to either the government, which will come out of taxes, or if it's the private sector, will come out of the products that we purchase. I mean, it's that simple, unfortunately. Some people may not agree with me, but that is kind of the hard truth of the matter.
Yeah. Yeah, so I heard, Marie, maybe you also know this, that Forbo, for example, was inventing kind of system for this life cycle assessments already early in the beginning, and they really did it together as a branch together, right, as a sector together. But it started with an initiative from the company itself. Is that something that you see more common now, or is that still something that we still have to enthuse companies to collaborate with you?
No, I think there's really a sense of urgency also in the manufacturing sector, communicating more, willing to communicate with all the professionals. No, there's really they also are looking forward to communicate about it. They want to find some ideas how to recycle everything, how to make it even possible, how to share the information as early as possible.
Yes, yeah. And talking about this sharing of this information, right, the EPD files, for example, what is the challenge in, making these files and then in the end sharing them and also being able to proceed working with these files? What are the challenges with EPD files?
They are complicated to understand and to work with. We see it's a challenge for everybody. For the manufacturers, it's a challenge for the professionals, the specifiers, because these are complicated data. We all need to work with it, and there's still like a long path to make it like more common and easier to understand.
Yeah. And how do you address that challenge? I'll come back to you, Matthew. How do you meet that challenge? How do you work on creating more readable files?
Like for instance, through the platform products,
Yes.
you can really, I would say, cut in small pieces the information, because EP declaration, you can look, you have tons of pages, and as a specifier, you have to read everything. And of course, there are some sections, but it's kind of like, time consuming. And cutting the information with some filters make it more understandable, readable, and you can find the information more easily. Because when you have a project, you, depending on the type of project, you have a certain idea of what you can add, can do, and what would be the maximum value you should include in your project. So in that way, having it cut like that will help you and save a lot of time, for instance.
Yeah. And is this also a focus for you to make it as accessible as possible for everybody? Because then you'll create a bigger impact, I imagine.
Exactly, yeah. That's the challenge we all face currently.
Okay, great. Matthew, you wanted to add something?
No, I was going to add that it is a really good question, and Marie fantastically answered by the great work that is happening over at BIMobject. I mean, we've been having this discussion. So according to the United Nations, there's 275 million people globally working in construction, of which we reckon approximately 7 to 10% of those people have some level of decision-making ability to make decisions.
Okay. Yeah.
Are all those people going to be able to read EPDs? No way. I've read them. They are hard documents to read. They're very large documents to create, but they are extraordinarily important. The work that's being done by platforms such as BIMobject and Prodict makes what is relatively scientific, complex data very easy to read. And this is a shameless self-plug, so I apologize. But I released this morning a podcast with interviewing one of the global experts on embodied carbon in construction. And we debate this for an hour on how are we going to globally look at bringing this data into an industry which is also going through an education and digitization challenge. So it's fascinating, it's possible, and I would say in Europe right now we are ahead of the curve, and there's some great case studies coming out of Europe around this right now.
Yes, we have to almost round up because I see time is running up quite fast. So I have to choose between my standing out questions. I had a question for you, Matthew. What do we learn from, for example, Sweden and Denmark, where they're a little bit further, in getting their laws there? What do we learn from the demands of the political side of it?
That it was a political decision, not an industry decision, I think. And that is, the industry isn't ready. The fact of the matter is that these rules have been brought into place, and the industry has to respond. It has to find a way to do this. What the governments have done, though, is they have produced what we call a book of averages. So if you don't have the data available from the manufacturers you need to use, you can use average statistical data. You're penalized for using that data, but you can use it. So what that's doing is that's forcing an industry to accelerate through kind of like digitizing the data around this space. Will we successfully do it? Probably will take some time. Did the UK manage to achieve their BIM level 2 goals in 2016? No, not at all. But it was a catalyst into doing something, and a lot of countries are paying close attention to what's happening in Denmark and Sweden. It's very encouraging, for sure.
Thank you. Two last questions to both of you. Talking about political, talking about industry, talking about the client needs, whose responsibility is it that we actually get there, creating this system that would make us make better choices? Whose responsibility is it?
Maria, after you.
Everybody. I think if it's just going in, you put the responsibility in one party, it would be super hard to make things change. So it has to come from all of us, also as individual, when we want to build a house and we are such expectation and we have to, make it them clear. So it's, everybody, I would say.
I saw Matthew already nodding. Yes, everybody's responsibility. But we all know, if we manage a project and we say it's everybody's responsibility, then it doesn't happen or it slows down.
No. So this is why. So this is why we created Zero. So Zero exists to answer this question precisely, right? Because we all have the power to make change, but you have to be empowered to make change. You have to know enough. You have to have that confidence to go into your place of work and make those arguments. And the work that I do is precisely that. It's you're not going into your place of work asking questions about a project by yourself. You have 3,000 people in membership standing behind you, supporting you with, this is what you should say. These are the arguments that work. These are the arguments that don't work. And here's some education to help you and send your team to help. So that's, it's empowerment for sure.
Thank you. So last question. We envision the future with BIM data as a system, as accessible to everyone as needed, in your opinion. What do you envision in 10 years? What could happen?
You first, Matthew.
Thank you. Well handed off. Just a more productive, more efficient manufacturing product type approach to construction. We will be making money in different ways, but buildings will still look beautiful. They will still be individual. They will just be better buildings.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Marie?
I would say sharing the data better, easier, making it accessible to everybody, to the different phases of a project, because that's currently a challenge. Matthew addressed it before, but we see it all the time.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you a lot for sharing all this experience, sharing all the knowledge. And where can we, if we want to follow you, can we follow you somewhere online in LinkedIn? How can we support you? Follow where, what?
For me, follow me on LinkedIn. If you want to learn more about this, come and speak to me, and come and join Zero. It's free. We need more people. We're growing fast. It's also free. So just search for Zero Construct on Google and you will find us.
And Google. Okay. And Marie, for you?
Yeah, of course, you can also follow me on LinkedIn, but I would definitely suggest you to create your BIMobject account and share your feedback if you download some objects. That's always welcome, and it helps us. It helps also Forbo Flooring to get smarter.
Thank you for sharing. See you next time.
Thank you.
It's time for me to round up, but not without a spoiler alert. The coming days, Forbo Flooring, yes, the inventor of Marmelim, will announce a special quality. Yes, it will be possible to leave negative, past neutral, and really enter climate positive flooring. And I wouldn't be able to announce this already if it wasn't double checked, validated by independent life cycle assessment. So please keep an eye on Forbo Flooring socials, and thank you for joining. Hope to see you next session.